once failed. With an eerie sense of inevitability, Matira issued the order to dispatch a reconnaissance fleet. He watched with detached interest as their ships warped through the vastness of space. He never imagined they would find anything of consequence. Then, in the void of the dead zone, they saw it. The object was immense, a shadow against the stars. It was unlike anything the Xantharans had ever seen. A behemoth of metal and energy, a warship of unimaginable size and complexity, its signature unmistakable, a battleship human without a doubt. The council fell silent. For the first time in generations, the great Matira and his peers felt a cold knot of uncertainty settle in their chests. The ship was older than anything they had encountered, far beyond their understanding of technology. But there was no mistaking it. The humans were real. The realization crashed through the council like a wave of ice. They had mocked the myth. They had laughed at the legends. And now, the very thing they had dismissed as fantasy stood before them in full, terrifying clarity. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the very fabric of space, and its presence seemed to distort the stars themselves, bending light around it as if the universe itself recoiled. The Xantharan fleet, which had once been the pinnacle of interstellar dominance, now appeared insignificant, like ants standing before a colossal ancient titan. "How can this be?" one of the counselors whispered, his voice barely audible. "They should have died out centuries ago." "Perhaps they never left," Matira replied, his voice low, filled with a new, unfamiliar edge. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the fact before him with the arrogance that had defined his entire career. This was no myth. This was no fluke. The humans were here, but they were not the broken remnants of a forgotten past as the council had imagined. No, these humans had evolved into something else, something terrifying, something vast. "Prepare for battle," Matira barked, but the order was hollow, drenched in doubt. The humans had already made their move. Without warning, the massive human battleship, silent and deliberate, opened fire. The energy blasts were swift and surgical, tearing through the Xantharan fleet with frightening efficiency. For all their advanced technology, the Xantharans were no match for the human warship's relentless precision. Ship after ship was destroyed in mere seconds. The council watched, frozen in disbelief as their finest ships crumbled before them. The battle was over before it even began. It was the humans who controlled the battlefield. It was the humans who defined the space they now occupied. As the dust of battle settled and the remnants of the once mighty Xantharan fleet drifted into nothingness, Matira and the others stared into the void. The silence was deafening. They had miscalculated, underestimated, and dismissed the legends that had been passed down for generations. The myth of the humans had been real, more powerful than they could have ever imagined. The galaxy would never be the same. "We were wrong," Matira said, his voice a hoarse whisper. The humans, they were not a myth. In the aftermath, whispers spread throughout the galaxy, carried on the solar winds. The humans were not a forgotten race. They had been waiting, watching, and now they had returned. The legends were true, and the galaxy trembled. The council's laughter had been replaced by silence, their arrogance shattered. The humans had become more than a legend. They had become the new power, the new force that would reshape everything. And as their battleship faded into the vast unknown, the galaxy would forever whisper, "The myths are real." The Alien Council, a group of beings hailing from a race so ancient that they saw themselves as the custodians of the cosmos, laughed at the idea of humans. "Myths," they scoffed, dismissing the entire concept of humanity as nothing more than a folly of the younger races. To them, humans were a collection of fragmented tales, half-remembered legends that flickered in the archives of the galaxy. The Council of the Zorkhel, an alliance of powerful species, debated everything from intergalactic trade routes to ancient relics, but the topic of humans was always a source of amusement. The humans, a race of barely evolved creatures who were wiped out long ago by their own arrogance. one counselor remarked, twirling a glimmering, translucent orb between their fingers. The chamber erupted in laughter as the myths of humans, their supposed resilience, their miraculous survival, were paraded as absurdities. The archives of the Zorkel, their great vault of knowledge, contained nothing more than speculative nonsense about humans, and it was treated with the same seriousness as ancient Earth myths, mere whispers of an old time. The academies and explorers of the galaxy had long since turned their eyes away from the so-called human folktales. Every race in the known universe had either forgotten them or mocked them, their existence consigned to the same dustbin as dragons and sea monsters. Yet, even in their arrogance, the Council remained vigilant. They monitored the galaxy, ever alert for potential threats, but humans, if they ever had been real, were a species long dead and gone. It was a rare thing to see them even mentioned in recent years. Their name was but a ghost in the halls of history. Then, a strange anomaly occurred. A signature, faint but undeniable, pulsed from the farthest reaches of uncharted space. It was like a whisper in the void, a brief, flickering signal that twisted and warped, then vanished without a trace. A ghost in the system. The Zorkel, ever confident in their technological superiority, shrugged it off. After all, it was just a malfunction, a distortion in the fabric of the deep cosmos, they thought. No reason to worry. A nothing, the head of the council muttered, waving off the signal with a dismissive gesture. But then another signal came. This one much clearer, like a message sent across the stars. The coordinates were impossible to ignore, and the Zorkel, still unconcerned, dispatched a small fleet to investigate. But when they arrived, the first traces of something more real, more terrifying than anything they could imagine, began to unfurl. The ship's hull was unlike anything they had seen, old, yes, but undeniably powerful, emanating an aura of familiarity, of something ancient yet alive. It wasn't long before the alien fleet realized this was no random ghost signal. This was something real, something human. The confirmation was slow, painful. The ship, a behemoth of design, turned and slowly revealed the unmistakable insignia of humanity. A symbol, simple yet powerful, emblazoned across its hull. The Council's reaction was instant. A suffocating silence fell over the chamber. A silence filled with dread, disbelief, and a dawning realization that the human myths were real. "No," one of the counselors muttered, barely able to breathe. "They can't be. They were supposed to be extinct." But they were. The human ship loomed larger and larger on the holographic projections, its silhouette cutting through the cosmos like a blade through the dark fabric of space. A new truth began to settle in the minds of the Zorkel. The humans they had laughed off were real, and they were no longer a species lost in time. They had returned. The faint, flickering signals that had once been dismissed as errors were not merely whispers but harbingers of a far darker reality. The human ship began to move, its vast engines igniting with the power of 1,000 suns. It was only the first. Moments later, the galaxy's first view of the humans arrived in full force. A fleet of such scale and precision that it rewrote everything the galaxy knew about power. Each ship in the fleet was not a relic of the past, as the Zorkel had imagined, but a weapon of terrifying might. The arrogance that had once filled the hearts of the council members melted away as they realized the truth. Humanity had not only survived the ravages of time, they had come back stronger, more deadly, and more determined than any of them could have imagined. As the human fleet crossed into Zorkel space, their ships cut through the void with the calm, deliberate precision of a species that had seen countless battles, countless wars, and had learned every lesson they needed to. This was